Ah, yes, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for your dose of the four horsemen from the woke apocalypse? Yes, indeed. We've got Scott, we've got Joe, we've got Popeye, and yes, yours truly coming at you relatively soon. I'm waiting for Joe to come out with something smart, but he's not done it yet. Not yet. Oh, probably because he's too busy eating right now. I see you, Joe. I see you stroking the chin. You're desperate for me to go to you right now, so I'm going to stretch this tune out. Joe's just going to refuse to talk now. What a quiet world that would be. How we all doing, ladies and gentlemen? Yes. Not one, not two, not three, but four. Four? How would you describe us?
Three.
3.5 toxic men.
Two.
3 men and a baby. 3 men and a baby.
No, 2 men and 2 halflings.
Oh, come on. Are you still on the halfling?
1 plus 1 plus 1 half plus 1 half equals 3.
You do realize that when 2 half men, as you're describing us, get together, there's trouble, dude, because that means we can take like a leg each and we can like scale either side of you and just like you're surrounded, dude.
I just saw that movie Elf the other day with Will Ferrell. I haven't seen it in a long time, but, probably one of the best movies out there that he did. And interestingly enough, the author that they try to get in there to write a book real quick, he's he's about this big, maybe like that, and like a garden gnome. But every time I see that scene, I can't think of anybody in the world but Popeye. For some reason, it just comes to mind. I don't know. Maybe he'll start authoring children's books.
Listen, I used to think that Popeye was like, not UFC kind of ripped, but I used to think pretty ripped, Used to see him looking like he was doing fit stuff. He would talk about eating well, and I thought, yeah, they're one of your strapping American boys over there. And then I seen a wedding picture of him, and I don't know what had happened. It was almost like somebody had shrunk him and made the bride and groom ginormous. Or, much to my dismay, Joe, I came to find that Popeye might even be smaller than me.
That's what's so stunning about it. Yeah, is that I actually think he actually might be shorter than you, but he's a stocky little bastard. So no, he can. Yeah, he's a scrapper. But now you, on the other hand, you're kind of like a toothpick.
Yeah, I'm built for speed, not comfort. Definitely.
Yes, aerodynamics, yes.
You can't fatten a thoroughbred. That is what they tell me. To make me feel better.
Like a greyhound. Like a greyhound.
Yes, exactly, Joe. But how you doing, man? I mean, you've stopped eating, which is a bonus, I suppose.
Well, you got to do that. You can't talk and eat at the same time. Mama said, you can't eat and talk at the same time.
And before we get into something tonight, I don't know what we've got to get into, but you put a kind of tough stipulation on tonight's show, and that is that it's to have what, Joe? Substance?
Well, yeah, with the brain tuned in, you got to have substance. She can't, it'll waste away listening to some of the crap that we went through last night, so.
Oh, come on, that was good stuff last night.
There was definitely some good stuff last night.
That was our year in review.
Is that what we called it?
I don't know. Didn't you enjoy last night, Scott? I think he's actually trying to intimate he didn't enjoy last night's show.
I loved it.
I suggest that we do a decade in review because we are on the end of a decade. So I mean, just think of everything between 2010 and 2020.
Well, one of the things I
and
remember...
what kind of a crazy decade that is.
It was
Scott,
a crazy decade.
Think of this, right? Because it bore witness to the rise of a phenomenon, and then it's almost 411 type disappearance from public life. I'm talking about the halfling Popeye. There he was, riding the airwaves, and in this short decade, because time moves so fast, Scott, he just disappeared. And now we're at the end of the decade, and he's coming back again. It's like we've gone full cycle, man.
Someone better call David Politis. Have him write a book.
Yeah,
Wow,
there he is.
that's very
Nice.
Nice.
Yes. May I ask you, Popeye, is the image I've chosen to represent you tonight, is that up to your standards, or are we allowed to go with...
I have to do some new headshots because my beard is way more epic than it ever was before.
Are you still going to take...
Did you say Amish or epic? I couldn't.
No, epic. I look like I could go lead the Spartans into battle. I had to trim the sides down a little bit.
Okay, so it's more.
It doesn't look Amish anymore. I don't look like I'm living in an Amish paradise. Don't worry about it. The bottom is still epically long, but the sides are more under control. I decided to stop looking like, I mean, I know I live in the woods, but I figured maybe I shouldn't look like I live in the woods. You know what I mean?
It's probably a better look, I must admit. So, Popeye, this decade for you, man, you usually got a lot to say about absolutely anything. So what have you made of it? Been good, been bad, indifferent? Hopes, dreams, desires?
It's a decade. I mean, realistically, and all kidding aside, it went by pretty quick. We did a lot in the past decade, man. We all started doing radio. Before that, it was just YouTube. Kev, I know you remember back in the day when none of this live streaming existed.
Remember when you used to get the little... Remember you used to get
reward?
They would give you awards on the side of your channel, Popeye, like number 3 reporter in the UK and things like that.
Most viewed.
Yeah,
most viewed in the US. Remember that? They used to give you, and you could customize your channel.
Yep.
Remember how different it was? People were making some of the most epic graphics for their channels for the layout.
But I think that change, if we look at that then, the technology change, the ability to do what we're doing here right now, I think that's been fantastic. Now, that's not getting into all the other stuff that's come with it, i.e. freedom of speech and everything like that. But the ability for us to be able to hook up from 4 remote locations around the world and just boom, at this flick of a switch, basically, go live with a show that Scotty, in some ways, I mean, you've got the graphics, you've got everything that a mainstream show could have.
Yeah, it's crazy the ability that the individual now possesses, and to set up something like that and have a platform. That's what's kind of cool about the past decade, I guess you could say. It's just I would say it's also the decade that we saw the rise of the tech giants.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I was just gonna say there was just an article, guys, on I saw. I think it was on Drudge or something like that, that basically went along the lines of 2010s were the decade where humanity finally understood George Orwell. And and you're so right, because look at what you're saying. Big tech was and is pivotal in bringing that whole world about. And so there was a lot of good things that came about with the emergence of this technology, but you can now see, being where we are and having the luxury now of hindsight, look back and see why these weren't done.
Super chat time, boys. Super chat.
Very nice.
If hadn't been for Scott Popeye Joe, come on, sing.
But if it hadn't been for the way that it was laid out, they wouldn't have that control grid or be able to get away with it. It had to be a private sector initiative. And it had to be something now where they can say, well, look, it's a private entity. Therefore, we can restrict what gets done, what gets said. We have that leeway, that power. Whereas if it was a public place, then, the First Amendment would be much more crucial. Now, that's not to say that there can't be some sort of change or something in language that people or treaties would be signed or something like that would help.
But we see the trade-off.
Yeah, right. There's a huge trade-off. Exactly. You've got an 8-year-old that's making $25 million a year, right? Opening toys on the air, right? Yep. And on the flip side of that, any coverage or anything with substance is summarily, you don't want to necessarily say censored, but not
it's
searchable or available. Yeah, but it is
censored. Just spell it with a big C.
Yeah, it's pick and choose. They pick. They're basically the next generation of the record company, if you will. So, when musicians used to want to make it big, well, you better get a record label to hit your wagon to, or you're going to get, it's a lot of work to do it on your own. Then, internet came around and made everybody a platform to get it out there, to make it easier for people to get it and become more famous. And then they pulled the brakes on that because too many people were utilizing it in that fashion, and it was cutting the legs off of the industries. So how do you do that? Well, YouTube has basically hijacked that whole indie scene, and now they're this de facto new record label or new talent agent whom they pick and choose who gets to get out there, and that's exactly what's happening now. So yeah, it's great that you have an ability and a platform to host your video content, but you better have a banging ass social media feed or whatever to be able to do that. And even that's freaking not worth a hill of beans anymore. So it's crazy.
Well, people were using the internet. I mean, the past 10 years, we went from, I remember when we started doing uploads to YouTube, and it was just a matter of, and I know that Kev, because that's how Kev started. And that's how, Joe, you were doing your show and you started trying to put stuff up on YouTube, little clips here and there, and change the channel. Ken Webb, he was on there. Yep. Another old school YouTuber, Nuff Respect, was a dude from the UK. That guy, can I just say, that guy was ahead of his time, okay? Because the video editing that he was pulling off 10 years ago with the limited technology. I mean, I know it sounds funny to say limited technology in 2009, 2010, but it was computer-wise. We didn't have the graphics cards we have now. We didn't have all this super duper fancy stuff that you can add and transitions and lower thirds. We didn't have access to that. We had to make our own. And back in the day, everybody made their own templates, right, for everything. And this guy did video editing on such a scale with his YouTube channel that even today, it would be considered top notch. And yet he was doing this 10 years ago with the limited programs and stuff that we had to work with. And I remember, I started doing uploads just because the information, there was so much stuff I noticed that people weren't paying attention to. And I figured I could share stuff if I had a channel to upload it to and then send the links out. And then the stuff started getting watched. And I was like, oh, well, there's lots of stuff that people don't pay attention to. So I would find video clips that people, news clips. This is even before CNN and MSNBC had YouTube channels. The reason why they made YouTube channels were because the old school YouTubers like us back in the day started putting their videos online. Remember when they used to hit you with a copyright strike through YouTube for putting their stuff on YouTube? And now they all have their own channels. That's how fast that advanced and developed. That was in less than 10 years.
I remember that, dude. I used to upload the clips, and Paul Joseph Watson. That's how I got in touch with him. He used to use them for his articles.
Hmm.
This was even before Infowars were really
Oh
uploading
yeah.
it. You know, back in the day. But one YouTuber that springs to mind, like enough respect, was Sentient Mind. You remember him, Popeye?
Oh yeah. He did some great work.
Yeah, an Australian guy.
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant stuff, and way ahead of his time. Way ahead of his time. So we've got the whole kind of technology thing. That's obviously been very big. And also the merger, I would say, guys, over the past 10 years, or maybe the revealing of how close these tech companies are with governments out there as well, right? Because around the 2010 mark, I don't think there was Scotty's smiling away here. Try to be as careful as I can, Scott, but I don't think it was quite as obvious as it is now. That there's a little bit of collusion between these companies and people in power, right?
Oh, definitely. You know, I mean, we just look at the origins of Facebook, and it just is very, very coincidental that a Pentagon program known as LifeLog came to an end on the exact same day that Facebook went live. I mean,
Go figure.
go figure. Nothing to see here, I guess. But
Exactly.
Well, you know, remember when everything before everything. Remember when you used to be able to. There was a certain video platform that still exists that everyone uses. I just won't name it, right? We all know what that is, obviously. Hint, 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 right? You remember back in the day when there was no live streaming on said video platform?
Oh sure.
It was only
Yes.
hit the record button, record your video. And you could record a lot, like it wasn't live. It would record it, and then, you could watch the video back and edit it a little bit and then, hit upload or whatever. And that's not even there anymore. They got rid of that and turned that into the whole live streaming process. I mean, that evolved. It's just interesting because I remember it, and I remember using the platform when it first came out. I remember from before YouTube was owned by Google, there was Google Video.
Yeah, I remember all
anybody
those.
remember
That's where I
Google
used to get my
Video?
documentaries from, man. That's where I first came across David Wilcock. Now, obviously, my opinion on that character over the years has definitely morphed and reshaped. However, that used to be like a treasure trove. And what was really cool at the time, and you guys will remember this, you would go in and search for like the top 10 most viewed videos in the world, and 9 of them would be about our kind of content. They were
yeah,
viewed
I think
millions of times.
I think some of Everard's videos were some of the most viewed on Google Video.
Don't get him
and-
started, dude. Don't get him started. Oh, that's a rabbit
Oh,
hole.
I know. That's a crazy rabbit hole, man.
He'll tell you
but-
how many minutes of his work were stolen and re-uploaded.
I remember
You wanna
back
talk-
in the day, man, when Google Video was like the best alternative. Like if you needed a doc, all you had to do was go onto Google search and type in the name of the documentary, and boom, you just gonna click the video tab, and it would come up. And we ended up. So you remember I had a YouTube channel, Federal Jack Tube 3, and that was the one that was all documentaries. It had like 300 documentaries on it. It had a couple 100,000 subscribers, and then all of a sudden they gutted it.
Yep.
Well, that channel was before that channel existed. I had a Google Video account, and all the documentaries I had on there were originally hosted on Google Video. A lot of the documentaries, the old school stuff, like the original stuff from like the 90s, Waco, A New Revelation, and a couple other ones. That stuff wasn't out. There was just no digital copies. And at the time, I had just gotten my hands on a digitizing piece of software that could digitize, like take DVDs and turn it into digital files. So I proceeded to get my hands on every documentary. Thank you, Netflix, by the way. Thank you, Netflix. Because when everybody owes a big debt of gratitude to Netflix, whether they realize it or not, but when Netflix was starting, it was trying to be who everybody else wasn't, right? So they got their hands on, I don't know who was doing the purchasing or whatever, the deal making at the time, but they got their hands on really old school documentaries that you could not find on DVD anywhere else. So I purchased a Netflix account, got all these old school documentaries on DVD. They came in, they were digitized, and then uploaded to Google Video. And then from there, now there's still copies of them on YouTube. I see copies of the videos that I uploaded, and I know they were mine, like my original uploads, because they didn't exist until I digitized them.
Well, you
So
know,
I see
YouTube
that stuff still floating around to this day, and I'm like, yes.
YouTube have a nice tool where you can go and identify any of your stuff that's been re-uploaded, Popeye. Yeah, it's quite handy. You get to see who's been re-uploading it, what way they've re-uploaded it, if they've done it in a fair light or whether they've butchered your content. Yeah, so that side of things has improved as well, but you're always going to get people ripping other people's content off, aren't you?
Well, I did it with documentaries to get the information out there.
Yeah, exactly.
I have never once, and this is an honest fact, this is one thing that everyone knows about me, I've never made $1 off any of my YouTube channels. All the channels I had, all the views I've had, I've never, ever made a single penny off of them. My issue is that I get censored, but my bigger issue is when people, I don't know if this is still a thing, but I know it used to be really popular for people to go out and claim copyright on your video.
They've made
it would almost be like swatting, dude. That's what they would do. They would do that to get you shut down.
They've really improved it. They've really improved it, Popeye.
They make the money off.
Sometimes it would take days to get it corrected, sometimes even longer. So yeah, that was a real effective way in the early days of screwing with people, you know, is kind of doing that. It was really I don't know. They like to call it like the wild, wild west, but I kind of liked it. I got to be honest with you. It was just a better time. Just a better time when it was in its infancy. Yeah.
There was more look, I'd rather have the safety risks and deal with them myself.
Yeah, same
in the best way I can, than have somebody come in and go, well, don't worry, we'll take care of this.
But on the flip side,
clamp down the boot, you know what I mean?
On the flip side, though, you know, for content creators, they've given them every tool and then some at their disposal to be able to be successful and provide you 50 different ways to measure what you're, you know, whatever you're trying to achieve with your content. So they've really taken it and brought everybody's knowledge level up. So if there's a positive to be gained there, you know, it's a really badass tool if you know how to use it and you're a hustler.
Well, I'm proud to say that it was our generation of broadcasters that made big tech step up and do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because we were the ones that were innovating outside the box and they had to respond to it. They had to, they had no choice but to respond to what was naturally occurring, which was this growth of our consciousness. I just want to say this before I forget, because this is important. The whole point, I don't care if they say it's copyright. I don't care if they say hate speech. I don't care what the excuse is and who it's given by. It doesn't matter what company, corporation, or government entity, or even individual gives you this excuse. Okay, or any of these excuses. It's for the children. That's my favorite. Everything's always for the children. Usually the people that hurt the children the most are the ones that are screaming that from the top of the mountain, but that's a whole separate issue. Okay, it's about cutting off communication. That's what it is. Okay, the internet is about communicating. When people are like, oh my God, we need hate speech laws because my feelings got hurt. It's a long process to get there. Okay, if you understand and you've done your research over the years, then you know how society's manipulated. They can't just go do it because people would be like, hey, what the hell are you doing? Freedom. So what they do is they get society to hate their own freedoms. They get people brainwashed to hate themselves, their freedoms, each other. And then they call for, oh, I want hate speech laws. You shouldn't be able to say anything that you want to say. Look, you know what? I don't like a lot of the speech that's out there, but I'll defend to the death those individuals and their right to say that stuff. Whether or not I agree with it is a separate issue. If you take away their free speech, then you lose yours. But that concept isn't understood because they've gotten people to think on emotion.
That takes us to the next point. which is, for me anyway, this past decade, and it's accelerated the closer we've got to 2020, is the whole woke culture that is now everywhere. And what you're talking about there plays into this, Popeye. And if I think back to 2010 and compare it to where we are now, Scotty Lopez, dang dude, we live in a world now where what was arguably 3 different sexes, genders, is now over 100, okay? And rising. Like Popeye says, you can't say certain words that back in 2010 had exactly the same meaning as they do now, only they've been weaponized a little bit. And the perfect example, the perfect example, quantum supremacy. I mean, come on. If somebody had told you in 2010 that that's going to become a contentious kind of point in the future, there's going to be people really up in arms about quantum supremacy, you would have looked at them. And this was only 10 years ago, Scott. And let's be realistic, you'd have said, you're off your bloody mind. You've lost it. And here we are.
I was just about to say we've been on this exponential curve of wokeness that now we're at a point to where, there's actually stuff from 2010 that if you said it now would actually offend somebody. And it would be like a contentious thing. And it just shows how ridiculous things have gotten. Just seems like it's getting crazier and crazier by the day, like what somebody decides they're going to be offended by, you know? I mean, all you got to do is watch.
It changes from hour to hour, Scott.
Getting offended is bullshit.
You know,
it is. It's stupid, dude. I don't care if someone's offended by something. Wah. Wah.
Well, we were talking yesterday about what would be the what was he's like, whoa, yeah.
Exactly, Chewy.
What one of the most craziest things of 2019 was, and what popped in my head just now? The Democratic Socialist Convention. The jazz hands,
point of privilege.
Point of privilege. Oh my God, that is probably one of the most ridiculous things to come out of 2019.
Popeye, I know you want to jump in here, but I just want to make everyone aware that sometimes when Popeye talks, he talks too loud, and it really affects me. I get really anxious when Popeye's beard starts talking. So Popeye, I just wanted everyone to know that about me. Over to you, jazz hands.
Jazz hands, dude. When they did the whole Occupy Wall Street thing, right? They did Occupy Miami. So we went down to downtown Miami, Federal Jack, like the entire Fed Jack crew rolled out for this. And we went down there a couple times over the course of like a week and a half, 2 weeks. The first time we went down there with the projector, and we were projecting truth documentaries for like 24 hours straight onto the side of the Bank of America building. Until the feminazis came over and slashed the tent that our guy was staying in to keep an eye on the projector, and it had the computer and stuff in it. The couple of feminazis came over, and they were like out of nowhere, just screaming and yelling. The same stuff that you see now, that's where it was birthed. And not just in Miami, but like at a lot of the Occupy events.
I went to the one in Glasgow over here, Popeye, and I totally agree with you. Looking back at that, you can definitely see how some elements that were on display there were obviously recognized by the social engineers, and they thought, we'll take that part, and then we'll mix it in with all of this wokeness that was just around the corner.
Dude, the leaders, right? The people that the younger generations look up to now, right? That some of these people were at these Occupy events, and I could tell you from I have video of this, okay? This is why they didn't like us. This is why they slashed the tent and everything. Because we went down there just to put out truth, because there was people showing up and we were like, okay, well, we're going to, just like we always did. But the other thing is we had a couple guys roaming around taking video, because we were putting videos up on YouTube. And I have video we walked up and there was like 20 people sitting in this like circle, and they're, like, I don't even know, it's not a prayer circle, but I guess you could call it that. What the hell they were doing? They were all having a conversation, and we came over, they all started like covering up their books. Well, I mean, I know what they were reading. You could see it, but I saw it from like 20 feet away. They were reading the Communist Manifesto, every one of them. So when people are like, no, it's socialism, it's not communism. No, it's communism. You can call it socialism. It's communism. And communism really isn't communism. That was another created thing. It's called Illuminism, okay? It's all a big shell game, ladies and gentlemen. And the people that are running around, I want socialism, it's great. Well, first of all, even if you didn't understand the whole history of what communism and Illuminism is and all that, and where it all comes from, and who Karl Marx was, and who the League of Just Men were, because that was an Illuminati group, okay? And I say Illuminati only because it's an easy to understand term, but it was a secret society, a group of individuals. They called themselves the League of Just Men. They're the ones that wrote the Communist Manifesto, not Karl Marx. They just slapped his name on it. He was a front man. Where have we seen that before? Only multiple times throughout history. Anyway, even if you don't understand any of that stuff, good book, by the way, to understand the history of that and to understand what I just talked about, is a book by a deceased man named Gary Allen, very intelligent author, wrote many books, wrote about the Rockefellers too. It's called None Dare Call It Conspiracy. If you want the ebook for free, just go to federaljack.com, go to the download section, and there's an ebook download section, and in there's multiple copies of it. It's called None Dare Call It Conspiracy. Download the ebook or buy it for like $10 off of Amazon or wherever and read it. It's a short book, but it's kind of interesting to read it because it was written back in, I think Gary wrote it in the late 60s, early 70s. So when you read the book, you're like, whoa, especially considering everything that's happened since. And you can go back and see like, wow, this guy was like, would they follow this guy's book as a template almost? Okay. But even if you don't understand that, socialism has failed. I mean, it's clear as what's the expression? It's plain as the nose on your face, right? Go look at any of these countries. Go ask an old school Cuban immigrant. Go down to Miami right now. Go into Little Havana, right? And I dare you to go ask Cuban immigrants who are in their mid-40s, early to mid-40s on up, if they think socialism is a great idea here in the United States. Go ask them. Why do you think they're here and not in Cuba? Why don't you go ask them? And I know the younger generation says, well, it just hasn't been done right. So let's see. All these other countries have tried socialism, but it hasn't been done right.
But Popeye, they never tried it with 100 genders. Maybe it'll work this time.
Right. Well, then people will say, well, what about Canada? What about the Netherlands? Well, yeah, they have socialist healthcare for sure, but they're not full-on socialist systems yet. They're on their way. And if the people that push the levers of power had anything to say about it, which they do, then of course eventually it'll go into just complete socialism if it's allowed. But it's not. And you have to stop calling it socialism because that sounds really cool. All this young generation now is like, we should totally have socialism. I mean, I saw a meme. Someone was like, open borders and free healthcare and debt forgiveness. I don't have a problem with that. Of course you don't have a problem with it. You're not even using your brain logically. They're giving you talking points and you're going for it. It's like Bernie Sanders is saying all this. He just said when he gets in, the first thing I'll do is shut down those two oil pipelines, the Dakota pipeline and the other one, right? Oh, I'm going to shut those two pipelines down because they never should have been opened. Sure you will. Sure you will. You'll do that, and then there'll be something that'll happen. And then your vice president, when he becomes president, well, then the pipelines will open back up.
Yeah, one way or another, what ends up happening. They'll get their way one way.
Just watch a history. Just go read history, dude.
That's right. It's really not hard, to kind of see what and how the world works. It's screwed up, but certainly, you made a great point that it's the 2010s really that this last decade where humanity really awoke to a lot of different things that for decades there were a lot of people that were screaming from the mountaintops, but no one would really listen. And they were the classic conspiracy theorists, those that started down that road with the Kennedy assassination and the church committee and so on and so forth. But now with the internet, finally you've got traction on a lot of those issues that were once backburnered, but gained and garnered a lot of attention and a lot of exposure to where now you don't have that trust in governments like you used to. I think they said, was it 9% approval rating or something for Congress? And
Yeah,
even
but
that to me is insulting.
At the same time, though, as veterans of the truth wars, we also witnessed many's a battle, but also the repoliticization, if that's even a word.
Oh, yeah.
Of many people who had woken up to the fact that none of them worked for us. And a big shout out to Brent from the Paranormal Portal in the chat room.
Isn't that interesting? You had all of those people. It's kind of weird, you had the Bush years and they sucked and everybody said, oh, it can't get much worse than that. And boy, oh boy, then you had Obama and 8 years of that and that really sucked. And then everybody hitched their wagon to Trump, and I don't know why. I don't get it. I don't understand. First of all, how people that had it all figured out prior to, then all of a sudden ends up trusting, of all people,
trusting the plan, Joe. Trust the plan.
Yeah, right. A reality show billionaire, and all he's done is really turn the White House into a reality TV show. That's exactly
what his job was. Yeah, that's the whole point of putting him in there. Yeah, is because they need. Now, let me ask you this: has anybody on either side, and I mean the whole sides thing?
Bullshit. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Bullshit.
Let's just call it what it is. It's fake. Okay.
WWE.
Yes, people. The left and right is a lie. It's a false paradigm because they have to narrow things down into A or B because they control both A or B. What the problem was, people were thinking about C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Okay, and they didn't like that. They were like, whoa, we can't have all these different possibilities. So what they did was they reeled it in by bringing it down to base level thinking.
That's right.
They got people to argue over the color of our skin. Yeah. And then you can go from there. And then they throw other things out to divide at the same time. Let's get men and women arguing. Let's get and now they're doing it where even inside of like the LGBT community, or whatever, how many ever letters are attached to it now.
Don't leave out the P's and the Q's.
Amongst themselves.
Yeah, you can't.
Don't fucking leave out your P's and Q's, dude. Come on.
Well, however many, I don't know. I can't remember how it changes. So I don't, If
I find it quite discriminating. I find it quite
discriminating
discriminating against all the other letters of the alphabet that haven't been included yet.
The letters of the alphabet, whatever, right? Everyone's arguing amongst themselves. Now, ask yourself, how is this possible? Is this normal behavior? No, because logic would eventually kick in. But that's what the media is for. See, the mainstream media, that's where they play their part. How many people today that you talk to, ladies and gentlemen, actually know what they're talking about? They don't. Mostly people get their opinions from the media. They're told what to be angry about. Back when we first started doing this, more than 10 years ago, right? I've been doing Federal Jack since 2006.
Legend.
So
you are, man.
Like back then, they ignored you. They didn't even.
First they ignore you, Popeye. First they ignore you.
Yes.
Yeah.
First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win, and then laughed at us. Now they're fighting us, but then first they laughed at us. Right. Or first they ignored us. Then they laughed at us and made, these crazy conspiracy tinfoil hat wearing people. They actually think the government would take out its own buildings on 9/11. How crazy is that? Our President Bush is a hero. Look how he responded. We invaded Iraq, and they had nothing to do with it, though. Well, isn't that kind of weird? I mean, all you got to do is like step back and unplug. But the problem is everyone's plugged in, right? When we were doing this, when we first started doing radio, the mainstream media was still pumping it out on television. They were still, like, we used to call them the dinosaur media, remember? And we used to say, we're taking over, we're going to knock you guys out. Well, they adapted. That's all
absolutely they did.
They hired young people to work for them to help them adapt. That's what they did. It's not hard.
That's why they called everything we did the alternative media.
Yeah.
Because we were the alternative to the media, you know.
That's right.
And
He became us. And now we became, well, the alternative media became a parody of itself. Because the alternative media used to break the news. We were a different choice. Instead of responding to the mainstream media, we used to put out information that the media wouldn't even cover. And that's what was the draw, was we were bringing information and truth to the table that the media was just blatantly ignoring.
I find that Sky News, BBC, and CNN are still somewhat scared to go near Germanic gnomes and unicorns and some of the,
It's
the
just
stuff
shame,
that
really.
we talk
Well,
about.
not
on here.
CNN. Not if there's a plane that's gone missing. If you're CNN and there's a commercial airliner that goes missing, they'll speculate on it till the cows come home. Remember 370, MH370? At one point, they were like, did aliens take it?
What year did that go missing?
God, that was years ago now.
It was like 5 years ago now,
MH370
right?
was like, it was a while
I
back.
think it was over 5 years. I think it had its anniversary, didn't it?
that's another crazy thing that's happened within the decade, though.
Yeah, and they still haven't found that plane. They found like a piece of wreckage from it. Can I point out something? It's going to be 2020.
Yeah.
And the reason
Nearly
that plane is
six-
missing
nearly
is because
6
Black
years.
Box had like a limited battery life of like 12 days or 14 days. Hey, battery makers. I don't know what you guys are focused on right now. Maybe the black box, the little device that, helps them find out what happened to the plane. Maybe they could find the plane by tracing the ping of the black box, Perhaps we should give them more than 12 days. I don't know. Looking for plane crashes shouldn't be like, rolling the dice. Perhaps we can come up with something that could last just a wee bit longer.
Popeye, there should be a time limit on it. It puts them against the clock. It stops them being lackadaisical. It makes them move. You don't want to say it's just open-ended. I mean, there's still people out there searching for it right now. You want to put
Well, it
a
wouldn't
clock
be
on it.
open-ended, but give him more of a fighting chance. Give him like 30 days. It goes to show that like these major corporations, big industry in and of itself, right? It's just like with the BP oil spill. Have they fixed and upgraded any of their responses to spills?
No.
Have they? No.
No.
What's their response? What was their response back when the BP oil, when the Macondo well went? What did they do? First, they lied about it, which is just that little wellhead that's leaking.
Yeah, just a little
Never mind the
tiny
huge crack in the floor that Matt Simmons warned you about. Oh yeah, that.
Oh
guy
yeah, the one that died in his hot tub.
Yeah, he had a weird heart attack in his hot tub right after he said, "Hey, the ocean floor in the Gulf is cracked."
I spent
But you know
far
what's
too
funny?
many.
When Matt Simmons died, boy, did that bring the church committee up in front in focus because of the heart attack gun. When they had shown the heart attack gun during the church committee testimonies, that was even an option. And here you have a guy that was, in all guesstimations, he was healthy, but ends up breaking some really big news. And next thing you know, he's dead in his hot tub. And you don't think people are going to question that or should? And really, what he put out was pretty heavy. The fact that it wasn't a wellhead that was leaking, it was so much more, And
Remember
what do they
watching
do?
all the footage, Joe? All the
Yeah.
hours. How many hours did we waste though watching the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, dude?
Well, that's why you had BP Earthwatch. He took care of all that.
The rise of
Yeah, he
BP
did.
Earthwatch, and he's gone now. He fell by the wayside, yeah. So what was your top story then, guys, from the past decade? I think the BP oil spill could come into it big time. That was a big one, right?
Oh,
How about Fukushima?
yeah, I was about to say Fukushima.
Yeah, did you guys see the
That's
video
crazy
that
to
just
think
came
it's
out?
been
Did you see the video that-
almost a decade, man.
Did you see the video that just came out from Fukushima?
You send me a link to it.
I'll look for it and try to drop it to you.
You mean you
It's
don't have it
Japanese
stashed in your
scientists
beard
running
somewhere?
through Fukushima in like hazmat suits. Well, it's best, they're all going to probably die anyway because the suits that they have on are really not.
Oh yeah, they're really crap.
Oh,
But
bro, it's like
Ants just said,
wearing rain
Ants
slickers.
just said, make sure everybody watches, the latest video of them decommissioning the plants there. It's god awful.
They're not
It's
gonna be
still
able
a
to do
nightmare.
plants. They can't do so they tell everybody, oh, it's cleaned up, it's all fixed. It's not. There's video of them. Tina posted it of these guys running through the it was sent to her, and I think she posted it on Twitter. I'll have to find the link to it, but we watched it on the TV in the living room. Like we streamed it from the phone to the television to watch it in full screen so we could see it. And these guys are walking around underneath. It's in one of the buildings. I think it's I'm not sure what reactor number it is. I don't even want to say it's number 1, 2, or 3, or 4. It's one of the reactors where I can't remember which number it is, but the spent fuel rods in the pool and everything are up on the top floor. And these guys are going up the staircase, and you could see the paint is just like, you can tell it's radiation damage. If you've ever seen what radiation does to paint, it's not from the blast. This was because
When did you post it, Popeye? When did you post it?
She posted it a couple days ago on Twitter, so in the past few days, and you should be able to find it on her Twitter. It should maybe underneath media. Are you scrolling on her Twitter? I'm looking at the screen right now. Yeah, if you scroll down, it's got to be in there. It's within the past few days she posted it, and these Japanese scientists are running through there. And
yeah, Ange said it's reactor number 3.
Okay, so you hear they have the Geiger counter, and they get to the top, like they're going up the stairwell, and they get up to the top right below where this pool is. So they're on the floor below, and you can see the structural, like it's a big metal box, and then it sits basically on like a concrete floor. Well, the concrete slab that it sits on, the floor itself, is shattered, and you can see it's like caving in. You can see the rebar in it. And the stairs below are all littered in just like chunks of concrete. So these guys get up there. You're like, how is that even stable? These guys get up there and they put their Geiger counters up to it, and the Geiger counters start screaming. Now, there's no translation yet, but you can tell from the video and like their determination to beat feet. Kev, try to see if it's under media. You know how sometimes Twitter hides stuff?
Yeah, and the way that Ange just explained it to me is that, there's no way they can stop this. And the stopgap measures that they've put in place, they're running out of space and they're running out of time.
That's it.
And they can't stop the water from going into the ocean. So it's just this thing that never ends.
Going into the ocean since the event. And
that's what I'm saying. They can't stop it.
Here's a news flash. This is what people aren't getting. Things melted down into the ground, right? Well, Fukushima sits in between a mountain and the sea, and the ground is at a grade that there was a river there. They filled in a river to build the nuke plant. So now you have this river which still runs, through the soil and under the ground. When it rains, you have water that comes down out of the mountains, runs down through the ground, and because of the pitch, it runs down out to the sea. They know this.
What are we looking at here? We're approaching the part in the video.
Oh man, that is not good.
Yeah,
No,
that's the top of that's the ceiling. That's the ceiling that holds that. See all that rebar?
That's a spent fuel pool, isn't
Let's
it?
go back a little bit. Hang on.
Above that, that's the floor that holds the spent fuel pool up. All those rods are like MOX fuel rods, dude. It's just highly radioactive and deadly. They're not going to be able. They wanted to tear this thing down. They just said the Japanese government's like, we don't have the technology to do this. They don't have the technology to fix Fukushima. So when people lie to you and tell you, oh, it's cleaned up, look at this video.
That's not cleaned up. And I mean, think about it. What you're talking about, that mountain water going down, that goes into one of the largest aquifers on the planet that runs under the ocean. And it's just getting totally and completely radiated. There's no other way to describe it.
Yeah, and it also goes into the ocean itself.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Like, they talk about them dumping 100 of those containment pods, those bags of water that they have, or they get washed away, and they're like, oh my God, some of those bags got washed away. And it's like, dude, that's about 1/10 of what goes into the ocean and into the groundwater on a daily basis. That whole area, honestly, you want to know, really the only way to deal with it would be to evacuate everybody in like 100-mile radius and nuke it from orbit.
Shit. Yeah, you got to nuke it.
Because it would seal it, it would burn everything off, and then it would seal up whatever's there, and then that would be it. And you got to make sure it's done right and properly. But the only way to properly handle it would be to nuke it, and nobody wants to talk about dropping another nuke on Japan. And I'm not saying the headline tomorrow, YouTube broadcaster promotes dropping another atomic weapon in Japan. No. I'm just saying they would have to set off a detonation in order to burn all of the fuel off.
But it doesn't, and you're right, because think about it. All day long, that stuff is evaporating into the atmosphere anyway, Popeye. So it's not like,
And there's a storm. And
exactly right.
Do you think the radiation is like, hold on, we got to get in our typhoon shelter? No. That's not how it works, people.
That's not how it works at all, right?
No. I honestly think people would be more, and I'm not trying to put people in fear, but I think people would be more respectful, is a better term for it, than fearful of radiation if they could see it. Like if you could put on goggles and you could see the particles going off, right? Go on YouTube and look up particles in a cloud chamber, right? Like atomic particles in a cloud chamber, and you'll see that people take cloud chambers and they'll have just like the tiniest piece of like uranium, and you can see it going off.
You really need to get out more, dude. You really need to get out more. You want to be, there's a lot better, better content on YouTube than watching this, Popeye. Watching cloud chambers and things, I worry for you, man. I do.
Put that clip on, Kev. Find a cloud chamber. Put that clip on.
Get it on, Kev.
Your viewers can see what I'm talking about. It's, dude, if you watch like a piece of uranium going off, look, I don't know what they're going to make. Look, you see it?
Yep.
You see it firing off?
Whoa.
That's great, dude. That's what it does when you're standing next. That's one particle, bro. Now imagine everything at Fukushima. Imagine if you could visualize that. That's what radiation does. You see how the particles just shoot? Yeah, it punches holes through your DNA.
Nice. So CRISPR's probably a good thing, and the neural link is going to be required real soon by the looks of it, right?
So what you're saying, Popeye, is that is bad.
And the answer to pollution isn't dilution, I take it.
Is that what
just
you're
throw
saying?
some water on it. It should take care of it. It's fine. And don't worry. We'll take some cotton and we'll put it in like a cotton like sausage roll and just throw it in the ocean, and it'll absorb everything.
You're muted up, Joe.
That's a great point, because think about it. If this is not like Chernobyl, right? So Chernobyl threw a big cloud up in the air. Not that this didn't, but it threw a big cloud up in the air, and they were able to basically put a concrete sarcophagus around it and close it in to where it's got most of the radiation contained. This is so much different because you've got the aquifer constantly being poisoned. There's no way they can stop the water. There's just no way they can do it. What are they going to do? Raise the mountain? Maybe they should just knock the mountain down.
Right after the earthquake, and I saw that footage of those explosions, I was like, oh no.
Yeah. That was very bad.
They're not going to be able to handle that.
What about the core of it? Did they ever get that, or is that still burning down?
It wasn't. I don't think it's really a core. It's just like the rods. You know? And the rods were just launched through the air.
Well, they were atomized. They were when you saw that explosion, right? The spent fuel pools are at the top. So there was obviously that was a meltdown. But when the explosion happened, the spent fuel rods are sitting in a pool on the top floor. So when you see that cloud of smoke, that's atomized radioactive particulate. Now, I don't care if someone says, those particles aren't going to come all the way over here. They did. They found them in Florida. They found them on the East Coast. They found them on the West Coast. They found them in central the central United States, in the middle of the country. Okay, nobody got away from. I remember when that happened. I wouldn't tape my windows up, everything. We didn't go outside. I wouldn't take the dogs outside.
Popeye went to the bunker. Fukushima is incoming.
Oh, dude, we were watching the wind currents and everything. Like, it was anybody that was paying attention. I remember people were getting made fun of because at first people were screaming about it exploding, and I was like, all right, everybody calm down.
You can get your iodine here. Don't worry about it here, folks. I'm telling you, get your iodine here today.
He's a piece of crap for doing that, by the way. He's a piece of crap. He bought
Get your tangy iodine
all
over
the
here.
supplies he could get his hands on, and then sold it like at a marked up price and scared the crap out of everybody. And then the downside of that was people stopped paying attention to Fukushima, largely in part because of that. Which kind of makes you wonder, but that's besides the point. Fukushima is a real problem. Nuke plants are a problem. Fukushima, by the way, is not the only problem. Here, let me just remind people that here in the United States, we have plenty of nuke plants that are absolutely beyond their working age, and they just keep getting renewed.
Do you think
The
that's
federal
why they're
government
like?
says, "Oh, it's cool. Don't worry about it. It's fine." We have ones just like Fukushima.
Well, what's the
But
option?
Well,
What do they do with the stuff?
Joe,
Well,
the
that's the
option
problem.
is you open a
There-
portal up to a parallel world, and you try and take over the parallel world.
The only way to
and-
properly get rid of nuclear material would be to launch it into the sun. But the problem that's inherent with that, I mean, aside from, we can't, we have been pretty good at getting rockets into outer space and getting them back without blowing up recently. But if one blows up in the upper atmosphere with all that material, that's really a big problem. And besides that, the radiation itself fries electronics, right? I mean, they have robots that they send in, $100,000 robots they send in, and it lasts for 8 minutes inside Fukushima, just trying to get video of what the inside of the place looks like.
Dude, I mean, I had to work for 15 years at a Superfund site that was loaded with hexavalent chromium. It's like, the whole, the government's known for stuff like that. And I wouldn't trust them for a second to handle that kind of crap. Certainly shooting it in the sky, and no less, then you're going to have the other guy over there, Kim Jong-un, who can now shoot rockets. Then he's going to say, "Oh, Yankee, huh? You want to shoot rocket? I got your rocket." Boom, shoot it. Oh, look at that accident. Another Challenger. Only this time it's a radioactive Challenger. Not good.
Well, see, this is why people need to, it's largely in part the nuke industry's fault for lying. I mean, nuke power plants, okay, yeah, they boil water and they make power, but that's a side effect. What they really do is one of the things that they do is they make weapons-grade uranium, right? They use it for weapons-grade fissile material. That's how they make bombs. That's what's going on in the reactor, and then the leftover crap is all the waste and the spent fuel rods and everything else. And then what do you do with that? What do you do with that? Oh, let's store it because that's worked. I mean, yeah, we'll just put it in the ground. That gets rid of it. No, it doesn't, because then 40 years later they build a subdivision on it, like they did in St. Louis. I interviewed a bunch of people in 2 different subdivisions. One lady grew up, like half the people she grew up with are dead from cancer, and at the time she was like in her late 30s. But no, there's not a problem. There's not a problem at all. I mean, they're still dealing with the stuff from the first atomic bomb, the Manhattan Project. The first time they were messing with nuke material.
Yeah,
here.
that Hannaford site is a Superfund
and
site
Hanford
up in
too.
Washington.
Look at Hanford, dude. People are still getting sick from Hanford. How long ago was World War II? When did we drop a bomb on Hiroshima? Right? Yeah. It came back on us too, ladies and gentlemen. We might be cool, man. We won World War II. What you talking about, Popeye? You're not patriotic. I thought you were a veteran. No, I am a veteran. I'm also intelligent, and I know that dropping nuke weapons on people like 70 years ago came back to bite us hardcore. In fact, it came back to bite us. Actually, it was like 80 years ago now. And look where we are. Like the spirit of all the dead from that atomic weapon. It's almost like it came back, and for 80 years, it's been slowly haunting us and poisoning us. That's kind of what radiation is. Doesn't matter. That's why we understood in the 80s we couldn't nuke each other. Mutually assured destruction. Remember that whole principle? Okay? Because it didn't matter if the Soviets wiped out the United States with nukes. We win. We kill Americans. Yes. Ha, 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 ha. Except, now I have third arm growing out of my back. Because, it's cool. I can at least do more stuff. But, where did this third arm come from?
Third arm would be better if it was on your front. Although if you got an itchy ass, it'd be quite handy on your back, I suppose. Or you could scratch that places on your back. You can't. Yeah, I want the one on the back, please, Popeye. If we're going like more than 2 arms.
Well, I mean, I get maybe a third. There are times I wish I had a third arm to like get more stuff done, for sure. But I don't want to grow it because of a mutation from dropping bombs. The point is, if they drop,
imagine being that old school. You don't want to identify as a 3-armed man. What are you trying to say?
Right, and now, I identify as a 3-armed individual, so
deal with it.
One of the chatters. I've been paying attention to the chat room, and one of the chatters is absolutely correct. If you get a set of power armor and some Radaway, you'll be fine. Or even some Rad-X and some Radaway, and you'll be fine. That's a Fallout reference. See, one of the listeners is a Fallout player. Actually, if you have an Xbox or a PS4 or even a computer, I don't know if they make it for computer, perhaps get Fallout 3 or Fallout 4. Fallout 4 I would recommend. Get the Game of the Year edition. Comes with all the downloadable content. It's a good training device for what's
Popeye, the new generation of consoles is almost upon us, and get this, dude, because when it comes to the new Xbox, there's a problem. It's pumping a full 300 watts of power, and the really ultra woke brigade are saying that now gamers are killing the planet. We're going way over our carbon limits here.
It's our fault, Popeye.
Yeah.
It's our fault. Us gamers, we're using too much power. We're killing the planet.
Yeah, man.
So you're going to have to shut down that Fallout 4.
We're worse than refrigerators and dishwashers and anything else that they wanted to try and scare people with, all put together.
Don't mind their like stretch limos that like all their favorite rappers ride around in.
It's all right. It's all right.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Don't mind all those private jets.
So,
Leonardo DiCaprio flies on his private jet to like an island, and he's like, we're destroying the planet with carbon. No, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go get on my 767.
It's all right. It's all right. It's just a clone of him anyway. It's not really him. I read it on Before It's News. But talking of Before It's News and woo like that, what has been the weirdest kind of conspiracy or woo or weirdness that's come along in the past decade? And Scott Lopez, I will hand it over to you, my good friend.
Okay, so you just want to go like full woo mystery
Whatever takes your fancy, dude. Whatever.
of the past decade?
Yeah, the audience almost demand that we throw some woo in here. You got to balance the woo with the serious. It's got to be done, dude.
Okay, can we do a tie? Because I'm gonna have to choose 2.
You can have as many as you want, Scott, because we're diverse here. We're inclusive, man. If you've got 3 or 4, go for it.
Okay, I'm going to say Missing 411. That's been the probably the biggest one of the decade, and maybe I'll go ahead and tie that with MH370.
Yeah. That's been a pretty weird one. I would go with the continuation and really the realization that something in our reality isn't the same as it used to be. And I know some people are totally anti-Mandela effects, but like I say, it's like deja vu. Until it happens to you, then I keep an open mind, and I know for a fact that when I started out on this road, one of the main things I ever learned was how America got embroiled in World War One, and it always involved the sinking of the Lusitania and all of the spin-off story around that. And never once had I ever heard of anything called Black Tom Island. Now, I wasn't born in America. I didn't have the Bernstein or the Bernstein Bears. But that World War One, that whole Mandela change, the Mandela changes for me, the Mandela effects, the changes in our reality, be it CERN, be it D-Wave, be it, I don't know what's going on. That's for me.
Mandela.
Yeah, that for me is probably up there in my top 3 kind of weird woo for the decade.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What about you, Joe? What would be in your the top woo subject that has grabbed your attention over the past decade?
Or we've maybe got deeper into it and learned more about it. Yeah.
Definitely D-Wave. Definitely D-Waves, quantum, CERN, time slips.
Yeah,
You know,
man.
the quantum guys. That was definitely the big thing for me over the decade from the woo perspective. The idea that there were all these realities that we are accessing, and just how far they've advanced the knowledge of the construct, you know, and then of course, and just time slip.
And alongside all of the real science we're talking here, of course, you had the programming, right? All these programs that involved like particle accelerators or quantum mainframes, and it was showing us them playing with time, playing with realities. That for me is definitely the biggest woo. But what Scott said as well, missing 411, all of these strange disappearances, the time slips, time speeding up. Popeye.
Yeah. And also, like, what about the ghost of Carmel, Maine, and
the shadow dude.
The shadow dude and stuff like that, you know, even stuff here at the supernatural things that are happening, you know, it's certainly on the increase, I would have to say, you know.
Yep.
I don't
working with Bill Bean and that. I mean, I speak to him, and just the amount of news coverage that the paranormal, the supernatural. Remember, I've joked from time to time. At some point, that's all going to become the natural, because it's just the norm. So I don't know, but Popeye, what about you, man? What kind of real, kind of weird, quirky woo? And I mean, I think of all the shows you used to do about the Titanic and the serial killer type stuff. Come on, man. What's really kind of stuck in your mind over the past decade?
Depends on what kind of genre you're looking for. I mean, if it's like
weird,
wooey, serial killer stuff isn't wooey because that stuff is real.
Okay, the weirdy wooey stuff.
Well, I mean, I would agree about the missing 411 thing and the whole national park, the whole phenomena of people disappearing in national parks. And I mean, just outright poof, like someone's walking down a path with them. I was telling this to somebody a couple weeks ago up here, and I was like, yeah, man, I was joking around. I was like, don't get too far ahead of me. We were out on my neighbor's back 220, the 220 acres they use as a cattle ranch. And I was out in the back, and I was like, don't get too far, joking around. I was like, that's how people go disappearing in the woods. So I started to tell him about the disappearance, and he's like, oh, they probably got lost. And I was like, well, you'd think that, except for like the person's 10 feet from the other individual, and like they round a corner and they're just gone. And they were like, oh, that's creepy. And I was like, super creepy. And then they don't find them. And then if they do find them, a lot of times, like, kids have said it was a hairy man. It kind of intrigued me to like do further research. So I researched as much as I could on this for a while. And Tina did as well. And it was some of the stories, like the legitimate, like missing person stories, when they find these people, they'll say that like they came back and it was like a hair, like if it's a kid, the kids have described them as like a hairy man. One person described seeing something come out of the woods that looked akin to like almost like active camouflage. From the way they described it, it would almost be like active camouflage. So, I mean, is it something grabbing people? I mean, is it the military testing some sort of stuff? I mean, a lot of the supposed UFO sightings were, you know, the military testing secret technology.
Well,
they've even admitted to it.
I had a call the other night from Lisa, one of our mods in the chat room, and she had a farm in upstate New York, I think it was, and she was talking about animals, livestock, chickens spring to mind. Something got into the coop. Really weirdness, right? But I was thinking Sasquatch because I'd been talking about Brian Gosling, the cop who had seen something, Sasquatches in that area. No, she was thinking more along the lines of Dogman. Now, whether it's Dogman, Skunk Ape, any of these things, I'm very open to something out there that we haven't identified, or something that at least the mainstream they wouldn't entertain at all.
I'll give you
Ange,
credit, by the way, for that, because you used to poo-poo it. You used to make fun of it, and so did Joe. And now you both seriously admit that, yes, there is some. When I used to bring it up, you guys remember on Hanger, you guys would be like, "Oh, you Bigfoot," and I'm like, "No, you putzes. Like, there's something obviously out there. Like, if you look into it." So I'm glad that you two have come around.
It's not Sasquatch; it's a Kelpie, and let's be real. And second, Ange wanted to point out something that kind of stuck out for her over the past decade is the increase in the amount of men that murder their girlfriends / wives that are pregnant. Like, seems like that's on the increase. A lot of murders in that regard.
I would actually agree there, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah. It's just one of those weird things that
because it's popular it's popularized on television. So
certainly is.
They knew. Remember when we were kids? Remember how they openly said there's certain things that we won't broadcast on television because we understand what it will do. We understand the psychological implications of doing that. So we will not do it. You remember there was actually a period of time where they wouldn't broadcast the stuff that you see now. I see TV shows now. Like, there was a show called The Following with Kevin Bacon a couple years back.
Fantastic.
Right, about a serial killer, right? How gory was that show?
Horrendous.
Every episode somebody was getting their throat cut, right?
Yep.
Is it necessary to literally show someone's jugular getting opened up and like their throat spilling out? Is it necessary to actually do that? You can't just allude to it.
No,
you can't
right. But what does that do to other people? I mean, of course, it dehumanizes them. Then you get these copycats. You get everything else.
Well, it traumatizes them.
Traumatizes everybody.
That barrier, and then they can dehumanize. Just like we were trained, Joe, in the military. Whenever we go to war, and Kev, I'm sure you experience this too. Whenever you go to war, or your country is in a war, and you join the military, whatever slang for your enemy is constantly used inside the military. When my dad was in, they did it with Vietnam, right? And because he was in between North Korea and Vietnam and into the beginning of the Vietnam War. So or the official Vietnam War. I mean, we actually started the beginning of the Vietnam War. First American casualty was, I think it was 48 or 49 in Vietnam. But anyway.
Ange calls it the age-old bloodlust that goes back to the ancient Roman empires where they used to feed people to the lions and everything else. It's something that's gone on forever.
Well, there is something in like our DNA that's activated, and they can play on it using the TV. Right? They don't need, like, back in the day they needed to actually do it, right? And like show people it, but now because that happens so much, our DNA has memory, right? They've proved that they want to use the DNA strand to actually as like a USB storage device, right? So all this memory is shared and then passed down through DNA. I mean, I know that instinct plays a part, but how do like animals, like rabbits and stuff, how do they know what they know? How do they pass on what they learn to their young? I mean, it's not like they sit down and they have rabbit school. Yeah, the parents might teach them a thing or two or protect them, right? Or any animals. I'm using rabbits as an example. But how do they pass down survival skills? A lot of it is stored DNA. It's memory. You could call it, you could say, well, it's instinct, or it's passed down genetics. Well, yeah, what is genetics? If you look at your DNA, like a USB thumb drive, right? It's passing down these memories. So that's also why you also see constantly destruction of like the Earth, asteroids coming in, stuff like that. There was, according to all, it doesn't matter what culture you go through around the world, they all have a similar story that at some point in time, the Earth was consumed by water and fire, right? And that everybody was, or most of the inhabitants were killed. And it doesn't matter what religion you believe in or what culture you come from. They all have a similar story, right? So whatever real event happened, that event, that trauma was imprinted on the DNA, on the memory drive, on the flash drive.
And Popeye,
it's passed down.
There's people thinking that we might have like some kind of we're shilling for reptilians by not mentioning them. So I think we've also got some genetic memory of the Chitauri. I've done full shows on the reptilians. I'm not scared to talk about the reptiles, folks. We don't play cover for the reptilian
The
ones
reptilians
here.
aren't the biggest mind-blowing thing to me, though. Maybe it is for some of the listeners that are just waking up, but that was mind-blowing for me back in like 2008,
Yeah,
2009, when I saw David Icke interview Credo Mutwa
Yep.
for the first time.
Yep.
And I was like,
Is
"Whoa,
that
this
when
guy's a
that
real
was,
Duke
dude?
shaman."
Is that when that was?
Yep,
Holy
Credo
hell,
Mutwa.
man.
That was back in like 2008, 2009, around there, or maybe even before. I mean, that was a long time
We've been
ago.
at this some amount of time, guys. Wow.
Yeah, I don't have a problem believing reptiles are real or that Hillary Clinton
Big
wears a
time.
human suit. No, she probably does. The Queen too. I have no problem, but that to me, that's not mind blowing. That's not, I mean, I guess it could be, but it's not really mind blowing. After all the research I've done, that kind of stuff is more on the tame end. What's mind blowing to me? I'll tell you what's mind blowing. How easily people got pulled back into the Matrix.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's mind blowing.
we were just discussing that. Yeah.
That's almost been like a weird inverse effect of everyone waking up. More and more people went back to sleep. I don't know. It's a bit weird, Popeye, how that played out. But I'm just glad we talked about the lizard kind of connection to this. And people, you don't have to believe it, but do bear in mind that we have an R complex in our brain, and those
Look, it's
yeah.
as simple as this, Kev. It's really as simple as this. Okay. The concept of reptilians, this is a misnomer that David Icke came up with it. There's this belief that he came up with this concept. He did not. Okay. He was one of the first people at the time that had the courage to say it out loud, because I understand what that feeling is like. I mean, just talking about 9/11 back in the day, people would throw things out their car at you if you were trying to give out DVDs and stuff.
Oh my God, yeah, dude. Yeah.
Okay, so I give him credit for that, but he's not the person that came up with that. He didn't invent Credo Mutwa. Credo he's passed away since, but he was a Zulu shaman. The Zulu are the ones that they have stories about the reptilian humanoids going back a very long time. Okay, he didn't go make the Zulus come up with this. He didn't go back in time, in his time machine to get them to believe in this. And there are other cultures around the world who believe in reptilian humanoids as well. And if you
There's
read,
no doubt these things were around, dude.
right,
Absolutely.
they were probably aliens from somewhere else, and they came here. Who knows? The Anunnaki. If you read the description of the Anunnaki, which you don't have to believe Zecharia Sitchin, right? But if you understand that the Sumerians believe this, well, Popeye, they're just a bunch of primitive people, right? So everybody up till now, all their stories are fake, but now we've all got it right.
Well,
Right?
not only that, yeah, exactly
I mean,
right.
so.
Because you have that, and then of course you had pre-flood, you had all of the genetic splicing that was going on, and you had centaurs, you had humanoids, you had
Go on, Joe.
interspecies mating, and all sorts of crap going on. I mean, it was like, how do you put it? Sodom and Gomorrah on steroids. And they sinned against, yeah, right, the birds of the air, everything, and the beasts of the seas, everything. They did it. They like, come here there, pterodactyl. Ooh, what did you do there?
And
But
by the way, to answer somebody in the chat, somebody said we believe in that, like this kind of stuff, but we don't believe in Q. Well, it's not that people don't believe in Q. See, people, the stuff that were the wooey stuff or the wooey side of things that, could have some basis in reality, people go, oh, no, I don't want to believe that. That's just them turning it off. That's not what's going on with Q. Q's been investigated, and it's bullshit. Okay? It's a psyop. That's the difference. It's not a psyop that for thousands of years different cultures have believed in reptilian entities coming from outer space down to the planet, or creatures from otherworldly beings coming down here. That's not a psyop.
Yeah, Enoch called them the fallen ones, and he was an intermediary between them.
I point this out not to pick on the chatter. I'm bringing this up because this is why we can't have a conversation about things. Because people just, if they don't agree with something or are mad at you because you don't agree with something that they believe in, they throw out an ad hominem, attack. Whether it's calling you a name, or they'll say something like, they will whip out you go ahead, get your drinking glasses out. They'll whip out a logical fallacy, and they'll be like, it's like false equivalency. Oh, you believe in this but not in this. Well, they're two separate things. Okay, they're two separate issues, and it's not belief. Okay, it's not really, you can believe in something all you want. It's not, I know certain things. I know that the Zulus have believed for thousands of years, as long as their history that they can remember, going back hundreds of years, whatever. But they've been around for, they're still kind of ancient in their ways.
Bring back
they've been around for a very long time.
Where's the Chittahuri? How do they fall into all this?
They're reptilians. That's what. By the way, let me ask you this. If it's such a weird thing to talk about, why did Cecil Rhodes? The Rhodes?
Yeah. You mean that? Why did he get buried there?
Buried at a crossroads in Africa.
Because obviously there has to be some reason, right?
This dimension.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, everybody's like, Cecil Rhodes, what a great guy, and he was a philanthropist, and he was so intelligent, and blah 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 blah. But no one ever talks about the fact that he believed in the Chittahuri so much that he was buried at this crossroads where they come in and out of this dimension in Africa. No, there's other reasons. He loved Africa, right? Sure. Don't mention the 6-foot-tall reptile people that he also loved.
Yeah. Never pay no attention. Pay no attention to those.
It still baffles me though that there's still people out there after all this time, but they're still kind of undecided as to what that letter of the alphabet may or may not be. And I'm giggling because if people were actually to take time and look, I was put to bed over a year ago, right, Scott? So way back, folks. It's nothing.
But again, think about this, guys. It's all about people needing that hope they the hopium.
It's a psyop, dude. It's the same way they lured people in to vote for Trump. It's the same
way David Wilcock was promising that the white hats would come back in 2010, rescue us all from the cabal.
What was it? Benjamin Fulford.
Benjamin Fulford and the ninjas, right before the 2004 China Olympics.
He's still got his ninjas,
What about the earthquake? Remember when he came out, there was an earthquake in D.C., and he was like, that earthquake was actually an underground nuke explosion. It was the white hats fighting the black hats.
It's okay, though, Popeye, because the hurricane that hit your state earlier on this year, it wasn't even a real hurricane. It was really the tunnels been flooded. Yes.
The tunnels are flooding. The tunnels are flooding. Where we go one, we go bah.
the underground tunnels under Florida. I'd hate to be the bearer of bad news to anybody out there that thinks there's underground tunnels under Florida.
They go
but
to
that would
Gitmo.
be a real big problem.
No, they go to Gitmo. Honestly, it's lined with Fulford's ninjas. They're all in a guard of honor, and they get teleported down the tunnel from Washington under Florida.
Dude, I remember. Let me ask you this: how is it that with all the great reporters or investigative journalists, radio show hosts, and bloggers, and just individuals that have looked into this in the past 30 years, how is it out of all of these amazing people, Benjamin Fulford gets an interview with David
I
Rockefeller.
don't, dude. I have no idea how that ever happened.
Rockefeller literally shit himself when he thought this cat had 1,000 ninjas.
Yeah.
Told him. I don't know if like, I don't know. I don't know if Rockefeller was like, yeah, we'll do it. Get them to think. I don't know what the hell. I don't like what.
I think he used. I actually think he used Unirock's microphone and he put him into an MK Ultra trance. He just kind of tranced him for half an hour, interviewed him, and he was gone again.
I don't know. Yeah, because he is good friends with the king of karate, and I know that they've had quite a few. They've had quite a few video live streams where they go over basically their grand plan of how they're going to take down the. I don't know what the heck.
Thanks for live streaming your stuff. Could you do me a favor and just get to it?
But all I remember is, them talking back and forth in Japanese. Hi-yo!
Oh, yeah, dude.
Remember that?
Guy's such a joke.
Brilliant question from the chat.
I remember.
Good question
I remember
from the chat,
I know
right?
what you're talking about, Doug. And he was like, this is our plan. Hey, here's a little, if you're gonna like take out the people or try to like.
Yeah, the Scooby-Doo method doesn't work. We learned that.
Telling everybody, that's not a good idea. Like, OPSEC, bro.
Right, somebody's asking who's going to win a boxing match between Pastor Begley and the wild man from Texas. There's only one winner there, and it ain't seriously. No.
Bro, he's got God on his side. What are you talking about?
He has things flying off the shelf in his house.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, that guy's
by themselves and punch the Texas fat man in his jaw.
Oh come on! Everyone loves the Texas fat man.
Right.
Right. Come on then, guys. We're almost out of time. So your final thoughts for the decade, or maybe looking forward to the 2020s.
Let me start off. I am absolutely looking forward to the 2020s. It's a starting fresh. It's a new decade. I would have to say over and the teens, there was a lot of things to be a lot of good advances, but overall, dude, I would have to say teens no bueno. So hopefully the 2020s, I'm looking forward to them. Much better decade ahead. Glass is half full.
I agree. I'm optimistic for 2020 and what lies ahead. So
same here. I'm looking forward to my neural link. I'm going to be getting my first robot assistant from Sanctuary.
Do they tie that in? Can they like do like a 2-for-1 and like do your lungs and neural link at the same time? That'd
be kind of cool. I'd be kind of cool. I'm hoping to get Craig Venter on the show. Really impress him. And then with a name like Venter, surely he can make good lungs, right? And his CRISPR kits. Come on, dude. But yeah.
Hey, Ange also wanted me, just so that I don't forget. She just wanted from her and from me and my family, wish everybody out there a happy new year and a happy new decade. For the love of God, I hope it's better than the last decade.
Popeye?
Yes, because this is the final weekend stream before 2020. So
yeah. Look at Popeye giving it.
What are we gonna do when that? We won't be able to stream again. Except like we could totally stream like any other day before the end of the year.
I stream every day. I stream
it's
every
not over
day.
Until the fat lady has sung, and I ain't heard the fat lady sing yet. I just triggered somebody.
Yep.
And remember, folks, Paranormal Portal, he'll probably be going live real soon on his channel. Yes. So go on, Popeye. One serious message for the great people who have tuned in today to hear the 4 horsemen of the woke apocalypse.
Well, if you want 2020 to be the beginning of not only a new year, but a new decade and a decade of like positivity and change, then you have to go do something about it. And I don't mean getting on your computer or your phone and making a video and uploading it and crying about how you were triggered or so you were offended by something. How about everybody start off 2020 by not getting offended? How about that? Let's try that. Then let's move on to having meaningful conversation and debate with each other without yelling and screaming like we used to. Okay? and treating each other with mutual respect, even if we don't agree with one another. How about that? Because we all live on this little blue ball. I know some of you think it's a plate, but whatever. We all live, whether or not you
No plates.
or you
No
think
fucking plates. Bye. No plates.
Well, okay, whether you think it's a serving tray or it's a globe, it doesn't matter. We all live in this, I guess you could say, like an enclosed capsule of some sort. Is that all inclusive in 2019 for everybody? Right?
Now you triggered me.
We live it. We all depend on one another. We can't just like kill off a bunch of people that we disagree with, or that we don't even really disagree with, that somebody has convinced us that we should disagree with because of some falsehood, right? Killing each other is like your body attacking the cells in your body, attacking each other. That's cancer. That's what that mindset is. Hating each other for pieces of sand, or for whatever religion you happen to believe in, or anything. It's never good. It's not cool, and it's promoted, and it shouldn't be. 2020 should be the start of a new decade of acceptance and love. And I'm not talking about the crap that's used to try to divide people. I'm talking about, again, even if you don't agree with someone and you dislike them, you treat them with respect and you have a conversation with them. You can't expect to change their mind and change their way of thinking if you're attacking them. You immediately put that person into a defensive posture, and it doesn't matter what you say, they're not going to listen to you because they're not in a thinking state of mind.
I can't promise I won't be triggered by somebody who introduces themselves and then feels the need to give me their designated pronouns. They deserve no respect.
It's a way of dividing everybody, dude. If everybody just drops all these pretenses, stop it. You're
not a moth, ma'am.
We're humans. It's really simple, dude. We're humans. You either have females or males, and in some cases you have people that are born with both sex organs. Okay, so that's a real thing, right? Well, so you have, I guess, three.
Triggered.
But scientifically speaking, okay, if you look at it, there's only two.
See, that's where I got caught up earlier on, Popeye. I had a bit of a problem there as well. I'm thinking, well, two, but technically three. But I don't know if you offend people by saying three or
kind of three. But you know what I mean. My point is, if you looked at it from a very simple, get rid of all this window dressing crap that's been thrown on in the past couple years, wipe all of that crap away, all these ways of dividing us. We are human beings. Okay, we need each other. We need to stop looking for the differences in ourselves and start to notice the similarities. And instead of hating each other for our differences, we should celebrate those differences, but at the same time, respect each other, not throw it in each other's faces and use it as some like sort of weapon. You know, your identity shouldn't be a weapon to change the way someone thinks or to lash out at somebody because you have pent up anger or whatnot. Everybody needs to start using logic and stop reacting on emotion. Seriously, we need to get back to just civilized discourse.
That's what I'm saying. I think Mr. Spock, we should all just take a page out of Mr. Spock's playbook.
You don't want to go full bore, never ever, lock emotion up and cut it away. There's a balance. There's a balance between using logic and emotion, and morals and things like that. You just have to use your brain. The media is programmed, or the media is used to program people to just think on emotion. Stop it. Everybody just take a step back and realize what's going on. And it doesn't matter if you disagree with someone or not. The real easy way to look at it is if the human beings, your fellow humans, are cells, and our country or our world, let's look at the planet as a whole, as a body. If our cells are fighting amongst each other, they're acting like a cancer. We're eating ourselves.
I'm sorry, Popeye.
I'm totally not like schmuck. Okay. I don't do ayahuasca and then go jump in the the Nile River or whatever and think that's going to change the matrix or whatever the deal was over there. It's real simple, man. I know it sounds new agey and trippy, but everybody just needs to like take a deep breath and stop fighting with each other. We all, that's Kennedy realized this during the whole Cuban Missile Crisis. Right? One of his famous speeches is he says, we all breathe the same air. We all want to see our children grow up. We do. We have so many similarities, and yet the only thing we can focus on as humans is our differences. And that's not natural. That's being done to us. And it's time to wake up and see what's going on. And that's how we're going to fix things. I can't tell you what the future is going to bring you, but I can tell you that if everybody stops and takes a step back and starts to realize what's going on, the future can be a better place because they'll stop fighting and stop hating each other. And then these people, the powers that shouldn't be, can't control anybody. The way they control everybody is by getting everybody mad at each other, having everybody fight, and having everybody hate and react on emotion. Well, let's break that cycle. How's that for 2020?
Pretty good, I'd say.
Yes.
Remember, folks, I'll be back tomorrow with the Safe Space and Nano Girl for our annual look at the Rothschild cover of The Economist.